really quite interesting. I mean, obviously I'm in my late 60s now. I was born in 1952 and I was adopted. I was adopted by into a very big multiracial family. My adopted dad was a surgeon and my mum was a classics graduate, you know, who would grind her teeth at an apostrophe in the wrong place. But when my mum was in her 80s, she decided she would write her life story. And an awful lot came out about the circumstances in which I was adopted. And it turned out that my blood grandfather was a policeman.
Ah.
Weird, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm.
So had you always been interested in law enforcement? And
I'm even more interested in now, but I'll explain about that later. But I was like lots and lots of youngsters. I'd ripped through Sherlock Holmes, Agatha Christie, Enid Blyton, you know, P.D. James, Ruth Rendell. I mean, they were just almost like meat and drink to me. I mean, I just loved them. I love the puzzle part of it, to be honest. I mean, the police procedural is necessary, but there are so many programs on the television, you know, that illustrate police procedural. And I can remember asking Ruth Rendell this very question. She said, "Oh, my dear, I just watch the television," she said. But since I've retired, I've joined the Safer Neighbourhood panel, which deals with the police, looks at body-worn video cameras, and I've always had good contacts in the police force. In fact, I mean, I know when we're talking about Joanna now rather than Martha Gowan, but one of my patients was a coroner's officer. One of the doctors I worked with had already done a law degree and was doing a medical degree, so he could be a coroner. So I've always had really good, of course, and my husband was a doctor as well. So the medical side of it, I found fairly easy, the pathology. You know, attending a post-mortem and stuff like that, and coroner's courts. The police procedural I've had to work at more, and that meant that any police who were patients had to have a double appointment so I could quiz them as well as give them their holiday jabs and things.
Did you really quiz them? I do hope you did.
I certainly did. Yeah, I did. And, you know, a lot of them, I mean, they're so nice. I mean, one of the chief inspectors there on the Safer Neighbourhood panel, he always sort of lags behind. And I'm just, you know, asking what would happen in this case. I've learned a lot about police procedural by being on the Safer Neighbourhood panel, which actually isn't really the whole point of it. But I did come clean when I went for my interview. I said, "Do you realise I'm a crime novelist?" And they said, "So long as, you know, nothing that you find out here, you don't share it, that's all right."
Right. Oh, that's fascinating. So okay, so you're not allowed to take things that you discover on the panel. You're not allowed to use anything like that. But where do you get your inspiration from?
I've absolutely no idea. I mean, like most writers that I know, I've got a notebook, I've got suggestions for titles, I've got ideas, you know, I always have an idea for, and then you just have to work at it. It's a bit like a knitting pattern, you know, you see a jumper, but it's stitch by stitch. And I would say with a crime novel, it's word by word. But they do start off often with an idea. I mean, Scaring Crows is the one that I can give the clearest idea where the idea for that. I think that's Joanna Piercy 5. And that was born out. We used to live in the Staffordshire Moorlands on a very rural place, and we shared a drive with a farm and a gardener. And the farm was a dairy farm, and every day, twice a day, the farmer, who we were very good friends with, would take the cows from the fields and walk them back to the milking parlour and then walk them back again. And he had a little whistle like that. And of course, this happened at roughly 12-hour intervals. And then one day, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so too early for him to be getting the cows in for their evening milking. I heard the farmer's whistle like this. And my husband and I were sunbathing, the boys were at school, and I'm really nosy. It really helps to be quite nosy, a bit of a Miss Marple. So I said, oh, I said, Robert, that's the farmer. I said, he's a bit early milking the cows. I said, what's going on here? And then I heard the whistle again. And I could hear the cows pushing against the gate. You know, they'd heard the whistle and they thought it must be milking time. And then I heard it a third time, and I was far too nosy then. It meant usually that they were going out for the evening. And of course, Margaret, the farmer's wife, would usually come and tell me and keep an eye on things for each other. Now I walked up and I looked to my right to the farmhouse, and the drive was empty. There were just sort of loads of old cow pats and flies and things like that. And I looked to the left and I could see the cows pushing against the gate. But there was no farmer, it was completely empty. So I woke Fella, gave him a good old jab in the ribs and said, Fella, there's something very funny going on. I can hear Robert whistling and the cows can hear it, but he's not here. So he came up to the top of our drive. We heard it again like that. And he looked up and it was a starling had learned to mimic the farmer's whistle. So the cows could hear it, I'd heard it, but of course it wasn't milking time. So that is the beginning of Scaring Crows. And that was where the inspiration for that story came from.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Confidence
that
suddenly spark ideas.
You don't always know where they come from. In fact, to be absolutely blunt with you, you don't always know where they're going either. But you just sort of start off with it and let it rip, like a bit like a carpet unrolling, you know, you just let it go. And if you get stuck one day, I go on a bike ride or go out with my friends and have a good old evening out. And then, you know, it'll all unlock. Your subconscious will unlock it.
Right, so step away from it and
step away, yeah.
Yeah. So I am very interested in writers' processes. So how do you work?
Right, okay.
So you've got, your publisher has said, right, I expect X number of books. When's the next one coming?
Yeah, I usually have an idea, and in fact I tell the publisher so they can you know, so they can realise that and hopefully keep room on their list, because obviously they have to plan that they publish so many books a year and so on and so forth. So the first thing I start with is a few ideas which I jot on a jotting pad, you know, and there'll be a sort of central theme. For instance, the one that I'm writing about now is a girl who's found in a very precarious position with a toddler in the pushchair, and the girl is mute. She absolutely won't or can't speak. And this is terribly frustrating for Joanna Pierce, who likes to get things wrapped up, you know, as quickly as possible, as any policeman would. They bring the girl into the police station and she is completely, she's not speaking, but her and the boys, their little toddlers' dungarees are bloodstained. So she believes, and it's not their blood, it's neither of theirs blood, but it's a relation of the toddler, and she is no relation to the toddler. So they're stuck, you know. So the first part, which I might have to make a little bit shorter, I suspect, is the police know or believe there's a crime scene and they have a girl who is mute. So where do you go from there?
And so once you've got that idea, do you plan it out?
No, and that has quite a cost, because I don't plan. I just get to the computer for a couple of hours in the morning. Some days I may be there till 4 o'clock, which isn't very good for your joints and things. But some days I realise it's not working. So I'll chuck something down. I think some writers, probably a million times greater than I, said, get it written and then get it right. Whatever you've written, you can change. But if there's nothing down there, you've just got a blank space. Yeah. So that's what I do. I sit down and I get on with it. I mean, obviously, up until a few years ago, I was writing. So that was very limiting you know, it would have to be on my days off or the weekends, which of course my husband wasn't too happy about. So, you know, it was really squashing in time to when you could.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's the other thing, isn't it? How do you find that balance when you're working as well as wanting to write and what have you? It's very difficult.
Well, I would say you've got to want to write a lot. You know, it's a little bit like, you know, none of us would forget to change the sheets or record a television program, not so much now with everything on online and things, but, you know, there are certain things, we wouldn't forget to brush our teeth, and it's got to be that much built into you. You write because you want to write. You don't write, I heard Mick Herron say this the other day on an interview, you don't write for the money, because a lot of authors don't make that much money. They actually need to carry on working, a bit like your son being an actor. You know, there may be times when he has to do anything just to keep himself, body and soul together.
Yeah. So it really has to be a passion then.
It does. You have to really want to do it.
Yeah. So you sit down, you don't plan, you just let the story run?
Unroll, I would say. Unroll, unfold. By my side, I've always got a notebook, and I'm making little notes. Sometimes I've also got one up in the bedroom if I wake up, and I've also got one in the car where I would obviously have to pull over, and jot down little sentences, little ways that explain it, or questions that need to be asked. I mean, God, I don't know where I'd be without post-it notes. I think I've got them instead of a brain, to be honest.
And how long does it normally take you to write one of your novels then?
Right, okay, I'll probably spend about 4 or 5 months on what many people would call a plan. It's really a bit of a first draft, and everything can be changed then. And then I put it to sleep for a month or so, and then I pick it up and start all over again. I read through it, correct things, change things, alter names. You know, I really sort of comb through it. Then I let it sleep for a week, and then I really hammer down and try and get, you know, every conversation attributed, you know, the absolute nuts and bolts of a book. Because I can remember one of my agents said to me a while ago, you only have one go at a book, you know, when we send in a manuscript, you only have one go at first read. You can go through it again, but it's not the same as that first read. So anything that snags your attention, for instance, a name change, you know, eyes, one blue, one green, one grey, one black, you know, so on like that. And particularly with names, I'm dreadful at changing names. And I know you can do change one, change all, but we've all got caught out like that, haven't we?
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
We're a bit of a word.
Yeah, my scripts, yes, are famous for that.
And that snags their attention. You know, when you read a book, it's obvious that there's some editorial queries that haven't been quite picked up. And you think, oh, cool, you know, it does spoil it. Even a really, really good book, you're always aware of it in the back of your mind. So that last read, I really, really try and do a really clean, tidy manuscript. And it takes as long as it takes. I've always said that.
And that must be incredibly important, actually, for writers who haven't got an agent, haven't been published, actually getting that first copy that you're sending out so spot on to attract attention positively rather than negatively.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of authors, myself included, actually, years ago, believed that whatever was wrong with a book, your agent or your publisher would sort it. That really isn't the case these days. They've got too many titles to get out. And an agent, you know, wants to sell a clean manuscript. In general, my literary agent will only alert me to something that is obviously wrong. And my editor that I have, and there's a sub-editor as well, you know, she really doesn't want to be bogged down with too many queries or problems. I mean, my literary agent, I have to say, is very clever, and she's, because I've had two agents, she's very clever at suggesting a way out of it. You could do this, or it would be better to do that. And she's the first agent I've had who's actually got that, you know, she's got the bit between her teeth, and her suggestions I've always taken them up. She's even given me a title or two when the publishers haven't liked a title.
Right, right. Oh, well, it's lovely to have a really creative agent like that.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. Believe you me.
Now, I know that you are also, is it the Crime Writers Association Libraries Champion?
I am.
Yes, for England and Wales.
I am, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, and why a libraries champion?
Right, okay. Well, we all know that libraries have been closed down under government cutbacks, and there's a belief that perhaps they're not as needed as much as they were in, say, the 1950s, 60s, 70s, so on, like that. But librarians are enthusiastic about the same things as we're enthusiastic about, i.e. books. And it's PLR, or public lending right, is a very important part of many authors' income. You know, if you're not there on the table in, say, Waterstones, or heavily promoted on Amazon or something like that, then your hardback sales, which are very important to the publishers, are going to be to libraries, and you will get money for PLR. Now, that's had quite an impact. PLR, public lending right, is a pot of money that is divided between authors according to how many times they're borrowed. It's capped at £6,600 a year, which obviously, when you're top 6.6, that's, you know, quite a significant check to get, particularly in February. So in recent years, as the cutbacks have had quite an impact on many authors who aren't like bestsellers or on the bestseller list, and in fact mine is, I get a third of what I used to get, as the borrowings from the libraries have gone down. That's largely made up by, as you were saying, about e-libraries, and you can borrow them as e-books and things. But personally, I mean, and this is just me being an old-fashioned person, I like a book. I like to be able to leaf a book. I like to be able to go back 3 pages and so on. I mean, I've got a Kindle, and I can put them on my phone, and I can put them on my iPad. But, you know, there's nothing like having a book, I think. So Libraries Champion is promoting events. So basically, I have a list of members of the Crime Writers Association, the CWA, and who are willing to travel to events. And in general, you know, they're quite sympathetic. They don't expect to be paid hundreds of pounds, because that would mean that the libraries would have less money to spend on books. It's just basically to publicise themselves and do what I'm doing with you now, which is to talk about our favourite subject, books.
Yeah, absolutely. And so are the e-books that you can borrow from libraries, are they making up the difference now, or can you see them overtaking eventually?
They're helping. I mean, different publishers have different attitudes to ebooks, but for a lot of people, even people who have got eyesight problems, you see, you can alter the font on them, so you can do your own large print or massive print or something like that. You can have them as an audiobook. So all these are ways that that an author's income is made up from a book. I mean, the nice thing about ebooks is, you know, your own book may go out of print, although with printing on demand, that happens less often now. But, you know, with an ebook, it's always there. It's always sitting there, you know, so they can borrow it, say, off Amazon or something, and it's always there. So in some ways, yes, ebooks are helping a lot, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So are all books turned into ebooks, or is that down to the publishers?
I believe they are. I believe they are all turned into ebooks these days. I mean, one of the things that I might say is sometimes, not very often, I'll read a comment on Amazon, and they're critical because the ebook is so expensive, like £12, which people expect to get an ebook for about 99p, or else as a freebie a lot of the time. Can I just point out to anybody who's listening or watching, we don't set the price. We think that's a bit pricey, but we don't set the price. That is out of our hands. It's the publishers who do that.
Right. Okay. Right. So going back to the libraries, you're obviously very passionate about the libraries. Why in particular? I mean, obviously, hopefully after the pandemic, the libraries will be open back up again for us. But why do you think they're so important?
It's a chance to meet your readers. It's a chance for them to ask the questions and for you to say why you chose this particular subject, the way that you tackled it. It's a way for you to be out there, because obviously most of the time when you're writing a book, I mean, for me, I'm in a small study. It's lovely and cozy and everything, and I've got lovely views out of the window, but basically I am alone, and that's the way writers work. You know, it's a slightly